3 bourbons on this list smell like success but taste like regret. 2 bourbons cost under $30 and outperform bottles 5 times their price. 1 bourbon that gets called bottom shelf trash by snobs just beat your $150 allocated bottle in a blind taste test. I ranked 11 famous bourbons worst to best, not by price, not by rarity, but by what your mouth actually experiences when you stop lying to yourself about what you're tasting. The number 1 bourbon lives on regular shelves. You've probably walked past it 100 times thinking it was too common to be good. The number 11 bourbon? People join raffles and refresh websites at midnight just to overpay for it. Subscribe before I destroy every bourbon flex you've ever posted. Hashtag 11, Blanton's. Blanton's doesn't taste like $200. It tastes like you watched too much John Wick and confused product placement with quality. Every crime drama, every executive office scene, every flex and Instagram post from people who waited 6 months in raffles just to overpay. That horse-top bottle has appeared in more movies than it has in actual glasses being drunk. Here's the psychology they're exploiting. Humans assign higher value to things they can't access easily. It's called artificial scarcity, and Blanton's runs that playbook perfectly. Limit supply, watch demand explode. Laugh as people convince themselves the liquid justifies the hunt. The actual bourbon? Honey, citrus, vanilla cream. Smooth and polished, sure. But remove the horse stopper and the 6-month wait, and you're tasting a $60 experience maximum. The finish disappears clean without leaving any reason to pour another glass beyond proving you can afford to waste it. Blanton's lives behind glass now in collections where guests can see it but never touch it. Display bourbon, status bourbon. The bottle you photograph more than you actually drink because opening it feels like burning money you worked too hard to get. It ranks last not because it's undrinkable, it's perfectly fine, but because it represents the worst of modern bourbon culture. Hype and scarcity replacing actual substance. You're not buying whiskey, you're buying validation. Hashtag 10, Maker's Mark. Maker's Mark tastes like someone melted a vanilla-scented candle into a glass and called it premium bourbon. That red wax seal promises elegance. The liquid delivers mediocrity with a Kentucky accent. Strip away the Instagram-worthy packaging, and you're left with something that smells sweet but lands flat, like biting into beautiful-looking bread that has 0 flavor. The weeded mash bill makes it smooth, which beginners confuse with good. But smoothness without character is just expensive warm water. Comment sections are brutal about this one. One person described it as nail polish and grain alcohol pretending to be sophisticated. Another said it tastes like what you'd imagine if you tried to make bourbon in a dorm room with limited resources and high hopes. Maker's appears everywhere because it offends nobody, which means it excites nobody either. Airport bars where travelers want recognizable labels. Wedding receptions where the couple picked based on the bottle looking classy in photos. Steakhouses where order by familiarity rather than flavor. The taste profile reads like a corporate committee designed it to be universally acceptable. Gentle sweetness, soft bacon spice, a finish that exits politely without leaving literally any impression on your tongue. It's bourbon engineered to avoid complaints rather than earn compliments. At this price, you're paying for brand recognition and pretty packaging. The actual liquid performance? Beaten by bottles costing half as much. Number 9, Old Crow. Old Crow is what happens when a legendary bourbon gets sold, resold, and stripped for parts until only the name remains. This bottle used to mean something. Dr. James Crow revolutionized bourbon production. Mark Twain drank it. Presidents requested it by name. Your grandfather probably has stories about Old Crow from the 1960s and 70s, when it was legitimate mid-shelf bourbon worth respecting. College kids in the 70s drank it at parties not because it was cheap, but because it was decent bourbon they could actually afford. Now, It tastes like someone described bourbon over a bad phone connection and a factory tried recreating it from that description. Thin, sharp ethanol bite with vague caramel sweetness that evaporates before you can form an opinion about it. One person tried it neat accidentally, forgot to add water and ice like usual, and was shocked it wasn't terrible. That's the saddest compliment possible. Better than expected when consumed by mistake. Old Crow appears in places where price matters more than experience. College apartments where mixing with anything sweet makes it tolerable. Dive bars with flickering signs and bartenders who stopped caring years ago. Budget liquor aisles where it sits next to actual cleaning products because, functionally, that's its tier now. The nose suggests bourbon exists somewhere in the bottle. The taste confirms it's hiding well. Like chewing young wood someone spilt corn syrup on, then added just enough alcohol to make it legally classifiable as whiskey. Number 9, because it's the most tragic entry on this list. A once proud legacy reduced to being the thing people grab when they've already made too many bad decisions that evening. Hashtag 8, Jim Beam White Label. Jim Beam White Label built bourbon habits for 3 generations of Americans without apologies, fancy bottles, or pretending to be something it's not. This is honest work in a glass. It tastes exactly like it costs. Vanilla, corn sweetness, that peanut shell note Beam's famous for, and a bite that reminds you alcohol exists. Nothing artisanal, nothing Instagram-worthy, just bourbon showing up to do its job without demanding a standing ovation. Walk into any VFW hall, bowling alley, construction site trailer, or roadside bar off an interstate exit. Jim Beam White is there. Not because it's the best, but because it doesn't pretend to be. Mix it with Coca-Cola, though, and it becomes exactly what millions want. Something that takes the edge off without requiring tasting notes or a whiskey journal. Beam White ranks here because it knows its role and plays it with dignity. It's not competing with craft bourbon. It's not chasing awards. It's just been affordable and present for generations. Sometimes showing up is enough. 7. Basil Hayden's. Basil Hayden's sits at 80 proof, which is bourbon with its spines surgically removed to avoid offending anyone's delicate sensibilities. It's whiskey that apologizes for existing. That tall bottle with the metal band looks expensive on restaurant shelves, which explains its entire strategy. Appearance over intensity. The liquid inside tastes like bourbon's polite younger sibling who never learned to speak up at family dinners. Here's where the proof debate gets real. Enthusiasts argue bourbon doesn't start getting interesting until 90 proof minimum, where flavor oils have enough alcohol to properly express themselves. At 80, Basil Hayden's is basically bourbon with training wheels still attached. The taste is soft spice, light caramel, subtle rye. And a finish so brief you'll wonder if you factually swallowed anything. Smooth, yes. Interesting, no. It's like watching a movie where nobody raises their voice or expresses strong emotions. Technically fine, completely forgettable. Basil Hayden's appears in upscale restaurants catering to people who want to seem sophisticated without developing taste. Corporate dinners where ordering bourbon feels executive, but intensity feels risky. Hotel bars serving tourists who ask for something premium but not challenging. One brutal comment summarized it, "You're paying $45 for packaging and positioning. The bourbon performs like a $25 bottle that's been watered down to avoid controversy." Number 7, because smoothness without character is just expensive mediocrity. At 80 proof, it barely qualifies as bourbon legally, and it definitely doesn't qualify as memorable. 6. Bullet. Bullet performs 2 completely different jobs depending on how you drink it, and that split personality defines everything about its reputation. In cocktails, Bullet is legitimate. That high rye mash bill brings orange zest, black pepper, and structured spice that cuts through mixers instead of disappearing.
Bartenders during the craft cocktail boom loved it because it made old fashions and Manhattans taste intentional rather than generic. Neat though, that's where opinions split hard. The spice feels aggressive instead of balanced. The mid-palate narrows quickly. The oak occasionally tips bitter depending on batch. It's bourbon built for supporting other flavors, not standing alone confidently. Comment sections reflect this divide perfectly. Cocktail enthusiasts defend Bullet religiously, calling anyone who criticizes it neat snobs who don't understand versatility. Neat drinkers shrug and say, it's fine for mixing, but why would I sip?
This when Four Roses exists at the same price. Culturally, Bullet became the gateway cool bourbon for younger drinkers discovering whiskey through craft bars and gentrified neighborhoods. That frontier bottle design screams heritage, which is hilarious considering it's contract distilled by MGP in Indiana, not some rustic Kentucky rickhouse. The bigger issue? At this price point, a bourbon shouldn't require specific usage context to justify itself. Great bourbon works everywhere. Bullet works conditionally. Number 6 because it found its lane in cocktails and drives it well. But specialization without versatility keeps it from climbing higher. It's a talented role player, not a franchise star. If you're enjoying this ranking, hit subscribe now, because the top 5 is where friendships end. The bourbon your uncle swears by might not survive the next 3 minutes. 5. Four Roses Yellow Label. Four Roses runs 2 mash bills and 5 proprietary yeast strains, creating 10 distinct bourbon recipes they blend into every bottle. That's not marketing language. That's actual distilling architecture most brands can't match. The science shows in the glass immediately. Floral esters from yeast variation, fruit complexity from different fermentation profiles, rye spice from mash bill balance. It's engineered precision disguised as Kentucky tradition. What makes Four Roses fascinating culturally is its dual identity. Casual drinkers walk past it on shelves because the label looks modest and unpretentious. Enthusiasts grab it immediately because they know what intentional craftsmanship tastes like. One comment captured this perfectly. Four Roses is simultaneously underrated and universally respected. Beginners overlook it. Veterans worship it. Taste it blind against anything in the $25 range, and the difference is measurable. More layers developing across your palate. Longer finish that evolves instead of just fading. Better balance between sweet and spice that feels calibrated rather than accidental. Four Roses appears everywhere because versatility is built into the formula. Need cocktail bourbon? The spice structure cuts through mixers. Want neat sipping? The floral notes keep it interesting. Trying to impress someone who knows bourbon? The 10-recipe complexity speaks for itself. Number 5 because it's what happens when a distillery prioritizes process engineering over packaging theater. 10 distinct bourbons blended into one consistent bottle. That's not a gimmick. That's craft at scale. 4. Knob Creek. Knob Creek consistently beats bourbons costing twice as much in blind tastings, and that fact drives the premium bourbon market absolutely insane. At 100 proof, dark caramel and toasted nuts on the nose, heavy oak, vanilla, and charred sweetness on the palate that actually lingers instead of evaporating instantly. You're getting legitimate barrel influence here, not just caramel coloring shortcuts. The cultural position Knob Creek occupies is perfect. It's the bottle people graduate to when they're tired of beginner bourbon but refuse to join raffles or pay secondary market prices for allocated nonsense. Barbecue joints stock it. Serious home bars feature it. Cocktail enthusiasts choose it because the bold profile stands up to mixers. Multiple comments mentioned the same experience. I was shocked how a $35 bourbon could taste better than the $80 bottle I bought last month. That's Knob Creek's superpower. It over-delivers so consistently that it exposes how much profit margin premium brands hide behind artificial scarcity.
One person said they're switching from Knob Creek to Wild Turkey 101 after trying it, which is high praise because those are the only two bourbons in this price range that actually compete on pure flavor rather than marketing. At 100 proof, the warmth feels intentional rather than accidental. The oak influence adds depth without turning bitter. The finish extends long enough that you're still tasting layers minutes after swallowing.
Number 4, because it proves craft and scale aren't mutually exclusive. Beam makes millions of bottles annually and still delivers this much character. That's efficiency without compromise. 3. Elijah Craig Small Batch. Elijah Craig Small Batch is what people recommend when someone says, "Show me the best bourbon for the money," and they're not exaggerating. At $30, this delivers complexity that $60 bottles struggle to match. The backstory matters here. Elijah Craig used to carry a 12-year age statement, and enthusiasts called it possibly the greatest value bourbon ever made. Then Heaven Hill removed the age statement, and the internet assumed quality collapsed. Blind tastings proved otherwise. The liquid barely changed. What you're tasting is warm caramel, toasted oak, subtle orange zest brightness, then vanilla, spice, and gentle smoke on the finish. It's structured enough for serious neat sipping. Bold enough for cocktails that need backbone. Mature enough to command respect without demanding attention. One comment nailed it. Elijah Craig is the only one that actually tastes like something. Everything else is just smooth nothingness or harsh ethanol. Culturally, it occupies the wise mentor role. The bourbon experienced drinkers recommend to newcomers ready to understand depth. Not flashy, not limited, not hyped, just well-crafted bourbon existing confidently in a chaotic market. The beauty is consistency. Batch after batch, bottle after bottle, it delivers that same elegant profile. No gimmicks, no raffles, no midnight website refreshes. Just $30 and reliable excellence. Elijah Craig ranks third because it proves affordable bourbon doesn't require compromise. You can have complexity, balance, and character without joining the hype cycle. It simply exists.
Excellent and unbothered, waiting for you to realize what actually matters. 2. Wild Turkey 101. Wild Turkey 101 has been sitting on regular shelves at 50.5% ABV, delivering massive flavor for decades while everyone else played allocation games and hired celebrities. The proof hits immediately, and if you're afraid of it, that's a you problem. Rich maple syrup, burnt caramel, orange peel, clove, and a finish extending so long you'll forget what watered-down smooth bourbon tastes like. This is bourbon with its spine intact. Survey data from enthusiast communities shows Wild Turkey 101 beating allocated bottles costing 4 times as much in blind tastings. That fact should embarrass the entire premium bourbon industry, but they just keep limiting supply and raising prices, while Turkey keeps showing up and performing. One comment summarized its cultural position perfectly. "I've been drinking Wild Turkey for 55 years.
Buffalo Trace will do in a pinch. That's loyalty earned through decades of consistency, not manufactured through scarcity. Wild Turkey never redesigned bottles to look premium. Never hired actors, never played the limited release game. Just kept making bold, honest bourbon while competitors cosplayed as craft distillers. You'll find it at dive bars, hunting camps, backyard fires, and on the shelves of serious enthusiasts who've tasted everything.
That range tells you everything about versatility and authenticity. The cultural divide is real, though. Beginners fear the proof. Veterans know it's where flavor lives. That 101 on the label isn't just alcohol content. It's a philosophy. Bold, unapologetic, and priced for actual drinkers instead of collectors. Wild Turkey 101 ranks second because it's everything bourbon should be, but rarely is. Maximum flavor without maximum price. Consistent availability without compromise.
This is what honesty tastes like at $50. 1. Buffalo Trace. Buffalo Trace earns the top spot not through artificial scarcity or celebrity endorsements, but by delivering legitimate bourbon excellence that even the hype can't fully ruin. Yes, the scarcity is real. Yes, people treat it like currency in Facebook groups. Yes, the secondary market inflates prices absurdly. But strip away all that noise, and the liquid inside genuinely deserves respect.
Soft vanilla, warm bacon spices, maple sweetness, and a creamy mouthfeel that glides across your palate before finishing with gentle oak. It's complex without being intimidating, flavorful without being aggressive, balanced in ways that make other bourbons feel amateurish. What separates Buffalo Trace from pretenders like Blanton's is consistency of experience. Whether you're sipping neat, pouring over ice, or building a premium old-fashioned, it performs with remarkable reliability.
The flavor profile works across every context without compromise. One person worked in a building next to Buffalo Trace Distillery, a converted barrel warehouse. They wrote, "I love Buffalo Trace," with the simplicity of someone who actually knows the product beyond the hype. That's the kind of earned loyalty marketing can't manufacture. The cultural impact is undeniable. It became the "if you see it, buy it" bottle, the unofficial currency of enthusiasts.
Scarcity boosted its reputation, sure, but the liquid earned it. Every sip reminds you why people hunt for it. At around $30 retail when you can find it, Buffalo Trace represents bourbon at its finest. Accessible enough for newcomers discovering whiskey, complex enough for veterans with hundreds of bottles in their history, versatile enough for any drinking occasion. Buffalo Trace ranks #1 because it's the closest thing to universally loved bourbon that exists.
Rich, memorable, and honest. The rare bottle where hype and quality actually align. So where did I get it wrong? Are you clutching your Blanton's bottle crying about sunk costs? Did I murder your favorite brand's reputation? Drop into the comments and fight me. I'll debate every single ranking with receipts. If you think bourbon rankings are brutal, wait till you see what happens when I rank popular rum brands next week. Subscribe now.